Okay, today I will be presenting on Alexandra Feodorovna, the last Empress of Russia. Before we begin, I would like to apologize in advance for my highly likely mispronunciation of the many Russian names and words to follow. Starting off with early life. Alexandra was born on June 6, 1872 in Germany. Her birth name is rather long, so I'll just stick with Princess Alix of Hesse. Alix was the sixth child and fourth daughter of Louis IV, Grand Duke of Hesse, and his first wife, Princess Alice of the United Kingdom, making Queen Victoria the grandmother of Alexandra. Due to an outbreak of diphtheria, a disease, excuse me, mispronunciation, Alexandra lost her mother as well as one of her sisters at only the age of 6. This marked Queen Victoria taking on the role of a surrogate mother to Alexandra. She greatly favored Alix amongst the other sisters, and wanted her to become the queen consort of the United Kingdom. A few different marriage arrangements were proposed to Alix, such as her first cousins Prince Albert Victor and Prince George. However, she was not interested in either of them, as her heart was stolen by not a first cousin, but a second cousin and the future Tsar Nicholas II. Queen Victoria watched over her carefully, and her tutors and instructors were instructed to send special reports back to her whilst being given continuous advice from the Queen. Alexis' tastes and standards were formed as fully English and fully Victorian. She was an outstanding student and talented musician, but she was too shy to play in front of others. Alix first met Nicholas on a visit to Russia when she was 12, and at 17, when she went back to Russia to visit her sister Ella, they reunited and their relationship became one of romance. Upon the deathbed of Alexander III, Nicholas's father, he gave the two his blessing, and on November 1st of 1894, Nicholas became Tsar of Russia, and Alix was received into the Russian Orthodox Church that next day, without having to repudiate Lutheranism, and taking the name Alexandra Feodorovna. The two married on the 26th that same month. The queen initially rejected to this marriage of Alexandra to the Russian Tsar Nicholas, but later sort of grew to accept it. She was still skeptical, but the relationship between the two remained intact. There was no bad blood, and they regularly communicated through letters. All right. So Alexandra was extremely unpopular among the Russian people. Many interpreted her shy and introverted nature as arrogance and coldness. She struggled to win friends in the court and struggled to communicate due to the shyness. Many people in St. Petersburg society, especially the women, dismissed her as being a prude, which stems back to her Victorian and English origins. The horrific incident of the coronation didn't help her case much. As rumors spread that there was not enough food for everyone, a crowd rushed towards the gift tables, and when police failed to maintain order, 1,000 Russians were trampled to death. Alexandra insisted on being treated with full honors as empress, and closed herself to the public, believing that the Russian people automatically loved and revered their emperor and empress. She is quoted in explaining to her grandmother that the Russian people revere the czars as divine beings. In terms of producing an heir, Alexandra and Nicholas faced much difficulty. It was not until the birth of 4 daughters and a couple of sad miscarriages later that their fourth child, Alexei, would be born. However, he would suffer from hemophilia, a blood clotting condition in which the Imperial Russian family blamed Alexandra for, quote unquote, contaminating the Romanovs with the disease of her own race, as her family had a history with this disease and she was a carrier. Alexandra, who was a devout religious woman, felt severe depression and just carried the burden that she had transmitted this disease to her son. And so she ended up developing a relationship with the Siberian Rasputin, who, after an incident in 1912, he had supposedly somehow saved Alexei, and this made Alexandra become convinced that he was the only one who could save her son's life. The outbreak of World War I pitted the Russian Empire of the Romanov dynasty against the German Empire. Despite her connection to Germany, with the Emperor Wilhelm II being her first cousin, Alexandra was fully on the Russian side, even though the public did not paint her in such a light. She worked as a nurse to wounded soldiers, and when Nicholas traveled to the front line in 1915 to take personal command of the army, he left her in charge. It appeared as though she appointed and dismissed ministers based on Rasputin's advice. In only 16 months, she appointed 4 prime ministers, 5 ministers of interior, and 3 ministers of war. Rasputin would be assassinated in 1916. Alexandra persuaded Nicholas to never give up absolute power as emperor. She claimed that Russia was not ready for a constitutional government. World War I proved to be an unbearable burden on Russia's government and economy, which were both dangerously weak. Mass shortages and hunger became the daily situation for tens of millions of Russians. 15 million men were diverted from agricultural production to fight in the war, and the transport infrastructure was diverted towards war use. Inflation was rampant, and revolution started to become more and more inevitable. The decision for Nicholas to take personal command of the military was disastrous, since he was blamed personally for all of Russian losses. The poor performance of the military led to rumors that Alexandra was part of a conspiracy to help Germany win the war. The severe winter of 1916 to 1970 essentially doomed Imperial Russia, and after rioting had begun on the streets of the capital Petrograd, excuse the pronunciation once more, my apologies, Nicholas II ordered the army to restore order, and on March 11th, they opened fire on the crowd. The following day, soldiers sent to suppress the crowds refused to obey orders and joined in the rebellion, thus sparking the February Revolution. Nicholas was stopped on his train on his way to the capital Petrograd in an attempt to end the uprisings, and he was forced to abdicate the throne. The entire Romanov family was placed under house arrest at the Alexandra Palace. The elective legislative body known as the Duma formed a provisional government during this time and effectively took power. The provisional government did not want to keep the family in Russia, so naturally they are disappointed to find that no foreign state seemed to be willing to receive the family, and they are forced to relocate them within Russia. In August of 1917, they are moved to Siberia, where they remained until after the Bolshevik Revolution, which greatly worsened the family's position, and they are moved to the Bolshevik-controlled Ipatiev house, where 75 men stood guard. Life here was a nightmare of uncertainty and fear for the family. They faced uncertainty from one day to the next, not knowing if they were going to be moved to a different location or if they might be separated from one another or worse, killed. The commander of the house, Yakov Yurkovsky, I butchered that name, was given the order to execute the family on the 13th of July, and it is presumed that this order was given by Lenin. And he carried out these orders the morning of July 17th, 1918, when the former Tsar, Alexandra, and all of their family, along with several family servants, were executed by a firing squad and bayonets in the basement of the Ipatiev house. Alexandra had reportedly instinctively turned away as one of the men took aim and began to make the sign of the cross, but was killed by a single gunshot before she could finish the gesture. She had witnessed the execution of her husband before her own death. In 1981, Alexandra and her family were recognized as martyrs by the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia. And in 2000, also by the Russian Orthodox Church, she was canonized as a saint and passion bearer. Her legacy lives on as the last Tsarina of Russia. And then this is my sources slide. Thank you for your time and for listening.